We can take a seated position. And we'll connect to our Ujjayi breath. Aligning skull bones over sit bones. Just getting a sense of breath, able to be felt in the body, penetrate the body. So it's a slight shift from focusing on or foregrounding what feels most solid, and the switches to foregrounding what actually occurs more fluently. And in my perception of it, it's like we're tracking with a fluid than tracking with a solid. Just letting the tailbone kind of sink down away from the brain. So the area beneath the skull may experience a softening. Like letting the tailbone depart from, move gently away from the brain. And then as you experience any moments of release around the brain, the neck, find out if breath is discoverable in the head space. Does it move through the head space? Is it felt in the head space? What areas of the head or the face, neck, brain feel if that head, that brain space is connected through the throat? Is there a partition, or does it feel like a throughway? Do you incur textural, tonal, emotional, or energetic differences as you shift from the head to the throat? And from the throat to the heart? So you can get a baseline read on this upper third, upper half of the body. And then we'll do a lot of kind of poses that will concern us with the legs, with the pelvis. And when we return to the head, the throat, and the heart area, we'll just find out if anything has shifted. Let's take one more moment. Ensure that you're feeling, sensing all the way to the bottom of the heart space. So like bottom tips of the shoulder blades, starting to get into the lower rib territory. We'll do some no holds Uddiyana. When you feel completely full with an inhale, move the hands in front of your legs, exhale everything out. Remain empty. Draw the belly in, back and up. We'll do just one more, just as a way of bringing our feeling, our attention, our awareness down in the body. And then there's one more exercise we'll work before we proceed. Okay, inhale. Just hang with it until you feel most full. Get a sense of that inhale with your ribs, your lungs, your abdomen. Bring the hands forward, swift, thorough exhalation. Remain empty, drawing the belly in and back. Release one through when you come upright. I'm going to describe a little bit of an anatomical action. If you know about it, that's fine. If you don't know about it, visualize it in an attempt to feel what's happening in your body. Okay? We have a multitude of diaphragms. But let's just first concern ourselves with the solar plexus diaphragm, because a lot of them are working in the same way, the same direction. And the diaphragm exerts its influence, in a sense, the way pulling back the plunger, like on a syringe does. It creates a back pressure, a negative pressure. And so in that negative pressure moment, there's some motion. Okay? So in this solar plexus umbrella moves toward the pelvis. There's all of this room created in the rib and the lung area, and so the lungs fill. So just take a few breaths, and as you exhale, the diaphragm moves toward the head, kind of umbrellas toward the head, and that's what we experience as the lungs getting that air moved out. So if you can imagine the shape of the lungs like a balloon inflating, diaphragm descending, and exhaling, that diaphragm moves up toward the head, umbrella-like. The air moves out. But now let's add a layer of detail to this. As you're inhaling, the umbrella's moving down, the diaphragm's moving down. There's organs down there. Soften the belly. So you feel that through your organs. And in fact, rather than trying to contain the organs, as you inhale, feel the organs actually getting a little gentle massage, diaphramatic. They're just getting moved. In fact, they're getting moved such that if we're relaxed about the genitals and the pelvic floor, we'll feel that breath, that motion, that organ shift at the pelvic floor. So we get to the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor, that diaphragm moves down on the inhale. Kind of moves up on the exhale. So let's just kind of sit with this imagery and this motion for a moment, because it may tend to move us out of our habitual way of thinking about or enacting a deeper breath. So I want you to feel, and I want you to get that a deeper breath, rather than happening by effort, can happen by relaxing the belly and feeling a softness throughout the viscera, the organs, the abdomen, the muscles, all of the soft tissue. So it's really inhaling and practicing, feeling just softness through the whole gut, intestinal, belly, abdomen region. And take a few more breaths like so. It's very gentle. And it can take some time, some real practice to get the hang of letting the belly soften through the inhalation. Because if we are to do any vocal or brain or head or face work, feeling, imagining, sensing this diaphragmatic motion, this quality of belly soft, is really necessary. You have to sit much more relaxed. It's really as soon as I start to raise my head or lift my chest, there's an entire kind of holding pattern I have to enact around my organs. I literally have to hold myself up. And in this way, the motion and the fullness of breath is really quite sufficient to float me up. Okay, so now that you have that image, you have that feeling perhaps, now we are going to put a little effort with that. So let's set up for a seated spinal twist. So we'll get our sit bones down on the ground, the left leg on the ground, and the sole of right foot planted. So knowing that we'll want that abdominal, pelvic breath access, let's just start off where we don't have to crank or wind too tightly into the twist. Just hook that elbow crook or that elbow over the right thigh. Establish some downward pressure through the legs and the feet. We'll just continue with our Ujjayi breath. Imagine the diaphragm moving down. Imagine the pelvic floor diaphragm is gently descending toward the earth. As those guts and diaphragms move down, the lungs can get full. So I'm actually reaching down with my breath to the floor to feel my chest and my brain lift. I'm not lifting my brain by lifting my brain. I'm not lifting my chest by lifting my chest. I create magnificent support by feeling the belly soften somewhat. Letting that breath spread down away from the brain. And that will help free up the brain. And when we get very steady with feeling this type of motion, this breath motion, this diaphragm motion, this organ softness motion, we can start to tune into the diaphragms of the head and the throat. And if you're trying to detect patterns, these diaphragms move similarly. They move down on the inhale and they move up on the exhale. Good. Release. Inhaling, unwinding. So we'll do the other side. And I do hope that you're sensing this as a very gentle, very steadying quality of movement. All right, so our right leg is on the ground. The sole of left foot is on the earth. And we're just hooking in a not too provocative way. Right? So we really want to explore this breath and this fluid motion about the body. So yes, the actual fluids of the body. But what moves fluidly is the breath. The softness about the belly that we're exploring may have impact, ramifications through the gut nerves and therefore the brain. So to work with the belly is to work with the brain. To work with the head is to work with the belly. One more very patient breath, feeling the organs descend, feeling that in the pelvic floor. And release. So when we unwind, I'm going to take this into dolphin prelude. So it means we'll leave our knees and our elbows on the ground. Now when we do this move of shifting the hips back, a couple things will help. So because we're concerning ourselves with the diaphragms of the body, the solar plexus diaphragm, the pelvic floor diaphragm, one thing that will help is relaxing the buttock muscles, relaxing between the butt cheeks, relaxing around the anus, the perineum, right? So that will help us kind of explore feeling breath in the pelvic floor. All right, so we get the elbows under the shoulders, clasp hands, raise hands, step the knees back, and then we have to step it back adequately so that as our hips move, we're not just dragging our belly or our chest along the ground. There's just a slight traction or elongation. Allow the head and the neck to hang out. You can put something under there if you prefer. And just feeling if breath can make it or be felt in the pelvic floor. So again, as I inhale, my solar plexus diaphragm moves toward the pelvis. And if my belly can soften, the organs move. Now in this position, as we kind of draw those hips back, you may feel how the pelvic floor is working in the breathing motion. You may feel slight little contractions and little motions and movements toward the head, away from the head. So you may feel those contractions around the genitals. You may feel those contractions throughout the perineum. You may feel those contractions, those releases around the anus, around the sacrum. Okay? So our point today is really to explore. So we're just going to take ourselves out of like, how should I feel this? What should I be feeling? And more into like, what am I feeling? What do I notice occurring? All right, and we shift ourselves forward. Actually, do a little bit of hip love before we do dolphin. So inhaling, slide or step your right knee between your hands. Pigeon. Now, if you can get the sense of relaxing around the anus, relaxing perineum, relaxing around the genitals, to feel that diaphramatic motion kind of moves away from the head toward the heel, and then it moves away from the heel toward the head. So we're feeling a different layer, a different sheath of body functioning. Right? So sometimes we enact these really big or strong movements with our muscles, these prime movers, these big muscular engines of the body. And what I'm asking us to feel is the stuff that moves on reflex, the stuff that moves in accord with breath. And stuff that's deeply innervated. And as we breathe, those nerves are constantly signaling this tension wraps around my organs. This amount of tension is moving around my joints and my bones. All right, inhaling, we'll press up. We're going to change sides. So exhale, slide the right knee back. Inhale the left knee forward. Now often when we're getting into pigeon, might be later on in the class and the muscles might feel really snug or warm or fatigued. And so it might be easy to bring a lot of our attention, our feeling, to the muscles. This is a little different. Bringing our breath to these diaphragms. Softening the belly will help us feel this down and this up motion of the body. The way our organs are held, or the way our organs slip and slide and move, creates so much identifying and interoceptive information. It maps so much for ourselves. Our internal state, how responsive, how fragile, how kind of locked into one mode we may be. Softening the belly. Soften, soften, soften. If you have a challenging time softening the belly, you might try closing the eyes from time to time. All the way down to the anus, the perineum, the genitals, hip sockets. The hip sockets breathe. The sacrum breathes. One more very patient, observant, feelingful breath. All right. Inhaling, we'll bring the hands under the shoulders. Exhaling, we'll slide that left knee under our hip. And now we'll set up dolphins. We'll go elbows under shoulders. Forearms, hands down, pressing on the ground. And the hope is that those last several moves gave us adequate kind of glute and pelvic floor kind of awareness, so that as we press up, maybe we're less apt to kind of clench or over engage those muscles. So here we go. Exhaling, the knees off the ground. Now there's a little more work for us here, in the sense that even though my diaphragm, my solar plexus diaphragm, moves toward my pelvis, now there's more of my organ weight kind of sitting on that diaphragm. So my inhalation is a little bit of a organ moving. There's just a little more gravity to play against. But you can still picture it. You can still image it to feel it. The solar plexus diaphragm. Inhaling, it moves toward the pelvis. So it's moving all those organs uphill. Toward the... Yes, that's it, Susan, that's it. Now, as we exhale, those organs, the weight of them kind of, it's a little bit of a slosh, a little bit of a motion toward the lungs. But still feeling that down toward the hip and toward the head motion. So we can maybe appreciate the weight and the relaxedness of the organs when we reposition them like so. Relaxing around the anus, the perineum. And gently set the knees down. All right, slide hands under shoulders and we'll press to downward dog. I'm going to encourage you to soften through the neck so that as your breath, your diaphragms, shifting toward the pelvis, shifting toward the head, the neck is relaxed and free, sufficient that you may start to feel this breathing motion behave through and influence the brain. Let's just give it 5 or so breaths. So you're still feeling that inhalation moving the organs, the intestinal organs, in the direction of pelvis. And this is a nice place to gently enact that belly action on exhale. It's very patient, very non-surprising. All right, gently set the knees down. We're actually going to have a seat to do this next little bit of chest. Okay, so I have my left leg out, my right knee bent. You can bend this right leg any way you see fit. And I'm going to resist that maybe habit or that urge to try to just kerplunk the torso down. And I'm actually going to leave the torso rather, what is this? Maybe like not even 45, maybe 30 degrees from vertical. Is that that? Okay, I'm going to reach the right arm out. Now, so far we've done quite a bit to bring our feeling, our awareness into the abdomen, the guts, the pelvis, the lower diaphragms. So now, as we investigate the throat and the heart and the brain area, what do you notice, if anything? Letting the breath descend all the way down to the sit bones, down to the ground. You may notice a resistance, little resistances to that descending breath, the descent of the organs, the kind of that motion that softens and lets the organs move toward the ground. Just notice if there's any little hitches. As we work so hard to, hold ourselves in a particular way, that these motions we're exploring can sometimes feel impeded. Just keep adjusting the arm and the hand. It's a little bit of a freestyle chest and neck moment. You don't have to leave the arm up. You may find it much more apropos to Keep adjusting the arm so it doesn't fatigue. In this way, you're kind of following the unwind and the softening around the neck and the jaw and the face and the head. You know, adherence to a technique is still that. It's adherence. I've often noticed, myself and others, that when we encounter a little hitch, a little adherence, or a little hiccup in the fluency of our tissues, very often there can be a little interruption in our sense of descent or touching the ground. So if you're kind of moving and scrolling through your entire body, and let's help ourselves out of this side and into the other side. As you're kind of scrolling through and you discover a little hitch or a little like, ooh, it's kind of stuck there. I wonder if there isn't at that exact moment like a little dropout, a loss of connection to feeling the ground. And so I'll kind of use my sit bones or whatever's contacting the ground as I encounter that little hitch elsewhere in my body. And it's almost like it just kind of unrumples. All right, we're on the left side. Not too bent over. I'm just starting by outreaching through the arm, chest opener. Going really patiently today, and if you had an expectation of a lot of rigor, I will disappoint you. But we need all of the movement nutrients. Again, if you encounter a hitch or that chronically dry, overly stretched, feeling tired area, feel the gentle breath descent, the diaphragms moving down, the organs, and the abdomen soft enough to move. In the hierarchy of things, the body will do much, much more to preserve organs than to preserve muscles. Right? It's behaving in accord to what the organs are informing them. And so if our organs are wrapped up in kind of this tensional saran wrap, in a stultifying way, it would make sense that our muscles would kind of create a stultifying effect, that our movement would be kind of stymied, sluggish, dry, achy. So softening the belly is a really big part of how our body will allow us to continue moving. All right, let's pull our way up, assist the head, especially if it's been hanging out. Okay. The only abdominal we'll do today is frog with our feet on the wall. Now, if you don't have wall access, that's fine, but I'm going for ultra easy so that we can have maximum breath awareness. Okay, so I'm going to set up my frog. I am shin distance from either a couch or a wall. And this allows me to separate my legs. The separation of the legs, this kind of broadens and opens up the pelvic floor. And I have my sacrum on the ground. I have my sacrum and I have my head on the ground. And here's the thing, I'm just breath focused, motion focused. So I don't really have to press or work or use those really big prime engines, those prime mover, those big muscle groups. Inhaling, feel the diaphragm, the solar plexus, envision it moving toward the pelvis, and then catch that in the pelvis. What do you feel? Do you feel breath? Do you feel those organs gently moving into the pelvic floor? And then as you exhale, do you feel a slight motion or contraction through the pelvic floor? Is there an ascent? We're going to spend about 10 or so breaths. Rather than track with muscles, track with your organs. Feel how breath moves and influences the organs, where there's And as you're feeling that excursion, that diaphramatic excursion, that organ motion, kind of toward the pelvis, toward the head, you start to feel the brain, maybe the brain and the dura and the diaphragms of the head start to move. If you were to imagine letting the air out of an inner tube, we know that the inner tube doesn't retain its shape. It just gives totally in to gravity. And so as the breath is being extracted, exhaled, exits the body, do we let go of the breath and feel the body relax? You know, I can imagine how, as we're letting go of the breath, I can imagine and get a sense of how our body might still be hanging on as if for dear life. You feel the body giving in. Like the tissues letting go of the bones. And now for this final portion, take your hands, your fingertips, and you're not going to lift your head, but just get those fingertips under the ridge of your skull, the very bottom ridge occiput. And without lifting the head up, just encourage the brain ever so gently away from the tailbone. You know, sometimes I'll do this when we're in a classroom, is I'll kind of use my hands and kind of move or lift the head away from the pelvis. You're doing the same thing, but not really lifting and not really muscling anything, just suggesting. And that may help you start to feel the diaphragms of the head. You feel the head moves a certain way on inhale. And there's another certain movement of the head on exhale. And let your fingertips sense all the way into the back of the brain. This pelvic and abdominal, this diaphragmatic breath, feeling the bottommost diaphragms moving, sets us up for really, it's like a little car wash for our brain. All of these pressure systems literally start to flush fluids through our brain. There's little crooks and there's little vacuoles and crevices. This is just a hypothesis. Just kind of a hypothesis and a little anecdotal wondering aloud. We can help our legs together as we start to exit frog. Just walk your feet up the wall or walk them together. But I wonder, and I believe that so much of the value of the nap, taking naps, is that it's letting these bones and these tissues and these tubes relax sufficiently that these fluids start to move through, and they're like clear out the byproducts of thinking, studying, mentalizing, computing, analyzing, tasking, right? So you literally get a little car wash It's like, even if we nap for 5 minutes in Shavasana, do we not feel cerebrally, mentally a little bit clearer? All right, so having helped yourself, your legs together, you turn onto a side. We're going to press up and use the wall for dolphin at the wall. Pardon me, shower. Now you can do this one of two ways. One way, and it can be more, let me try something out. It might be a little more taxing on the shoulders, but you can put your forearms on the wall. The other way is the hands. And so I think you're familiar with both of those. And I'm just taking the occasion to put my forearms on the wall with blocks between my hands. Because I know that once I fold forward and I just let my head go, those blocks won't be in the way of my head. So that's kind of nice. All right, so shower on the wall. You can go hands on the wall, reaching the sit bones away from the hands. I'm choosing forearms on the wall today. We've had some pretty extraordinary heat and humidity here in the Midwest. So I just think it's kind of wise, and when we feel that kind of heat fatigue, sometimes we just have to adjust our practice, right? All right, so that you're set up. You got some arm or hand on the wall. I'm going to, again, feel for relaxing between the butt cheeks, relaxing those big muscle groups, glute. And feel that descent, that motion of the diaphragm toward the pelvis on inhale. And then there's that and to exit, step forward. And let's stand at the top of our mat. Now that we're vertical again, after so long, get a feel for that descent, the breath gently, part of the organs moving down into a soft abdominal wall, a receptive pelvic floor. You may even feel that little hydraulic swoosh of fluid around the brain. Inhale now, draw the arms up. Now we can start to use some of those muscles. Exhaling, fold. Bend the knees and straight away, inhale, step the right foot back into a warrior one stance and just leave the ribs on the thigh. Leave your rib cage on your left thigh. And so we'll start by moving the hands inside the left foot. Just station here a moment, because sometimes it takes a bit to relax the pelvic or the glute muscles. Okay. When you start to feel your breath again in the sacrum, in the pelvis, now we're going to reach our hands behind our back for ostrich. Interlace them about where the sacrum is. And then gently press the knuckles away from the brain. Ostrich. I'm still leaving my ribs a tad on my thigh. I don't mind them resting today. The important thing is feeling the organs move in accord with breath. That includes the brain. That includes the colon. What's really cool is we start to attune to the organs, and we'll bring our hands down to the sacrum and then to the ground. We're going to set our right knee down and a head to ankle prep-like move with my hands down, my right knee down, just letting my elbows move down. And so we found that each organ has its own kind of unique circadian rhythm. So we won't get into it today, but we can certainly we could just receive or maybe even be open to the notion that our organs kind of communicate with us in their own language and in their own time. And let's walk the hands around the left foot. Inhaling, curling those back toes under. And when we exhale, we'll step the left foot back and we'll lower all the way down to the ground. You can certainly use your knees. Little shift of the tailbone toward the earth. Inhale into the abdomen. Lifting the chest up, using hands to support that cobra move. Exhaling, lower down, downward dog. I'm going to step into an ostrich. Other side. Inhale your right foot forward. I'm going to start off by just resting my ribs on my thigh, letting the head and the neck go. Because here, we can just start to feel the breath in the pelvis, just in case. Yeah. When I can feel breath again in the back and in the sacrum, then hands can connect, or interlace rather, behind the back. Kind of like our dolphin, since we're pitched forward, there's a novel weight afforded by this orientation, so that as we're inhaling, there's more of that organ. The organs are kind of wanting to go toward the foot, and we're breathing them toward the pelvis. We're kind of almost lifting our organs. Inhaling, we'll bring the hands down to the sacrum, let them go. Set them on the ground along with the left knee. Head to ankle prep. Allow the head to relax down. Now you may be able to stretch the muscles and just plop the elbows on the ground, but can we feel the breath? Can we image those diaphragm motions as we're descending into this head to ankle prep? And release. Inhale, the hands around the right foot. We're going to do one more move. Exhaling, we'll step back, lower down, all the way to the ground. Inhale, cobra. Exhaling, downward dog. Pause for just a moment in our downward dog again, so we can just have enough moments to remember that we're letting the abdomen soften, so we can feel that excursion, that diaphragm excursion, moving, sliding, slipping the organs toward our pelvis, and then feeling the organs slip and slide in accord with gravity as we exhale. That's it, Amy, that's it. Just letting the organs slip and slide. So we may just, those moments to unbrace, to unbandage, and to let the organs slip and slide. What a beautifully healing move. What a restoring move. All right, when we set the knees down to rest, our last move before Shavasana today is bridge up the wall. Okay, so let me just remind you, bridge up the wall. We get really close, seated near the wall. And when we lie on our back, our pelvis is very close or touching the wall. And then use the feet And as you press up, your feet will help you suspend, like suspending the spine. And you just come up as much as your upper thoracic or neck are tolerating today. We're just going to hang out here. So whenever you're ready, whenever you get it set up, come on in. And it's really important that when we're doing this bridge on the wall, that we're not straining, stressing, or stultifying the motions of our neck, our head. So things that are undesirable here is any pushing of the head against the ground. We do not want to push our head into the ground. A more optimal circumstance is feeling no encumbrance around the neck. You feel that little cervical arch, contour of the neck. And so here's one more inversion where the inhalation, if my diaphragms are descending, right, they're really like kind of bench pressing all of my organs toward the sky. So there's a little bit of work there. But also just letting those organs and the abdomen soften on the exhale. We'll start to lower. Bringing the upper spine down. The mid-spine. The lower spine. Once you've lowered, you may like having your feet, your legs on the wall. Let me also suggest, if your pelvis is right up against the wall, you might want to explore resting in straddle. Right? If the wall has got you fully supported, you may like separating your legs against the wall and just hanging out, legs apart. We're going to take Shavasana, whatever lying position that you love best for today. And practice letting the spine, the muscles, the organs, practice letting them go. whenever you're ready. Let's consider your exit strategy. If you're up on the wall, you may need to help your legs together. They've been passively kind of gravity hanging off to the sides. Okay. Turn all the way onto one side, and you'll use your hands to push up. Thanks for your openness. So we kind of shift gears a bit today. Namaste.